Good morning, a warm welcome to you all, wherever you may be joining us from, whatever time zone you may be in. Too often people talk about trusted communications, but sadly the reality is the opposite, and achieving trust remains all of our objectives. Today I'm very pleased to be joined by a fantastic group of industry experts as we discuss security in RCS, the importance of zero trust and reputation to the business messaging ecosystem. Now, for those of you in the audience not familiar with zero trust, for the purposes of the telecoms world, this simply means don't trust, verify. Now, it'd be great to get questions coming through from you during the session, which I will put to the panel, who it is my pleasure to introduce. First of all, Tom Van Pelt from the GSMA. Tom, come and join us.
Hello.
Good morning, Tom. Tom is Technical Director at the GSMA. And Tom, if you want to very quickly just give a brief introduction to yourself.
Yeah, for purposes of this session, I've been working on RCS for the past 14 years, I think. So very familiar with it. Been through the entire journey from initial specifications through development of the universal profile, until defining business messaging and verified sender, which is what we're discussing in this session. So yeah, I think that's it.
Brilliant. And now I'd like to introduce Simeon Coney from AdaptiveMobile.
Thanks very much, Paul. Morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Simeon. To you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, certainly. So I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for AdaptiveMobile Security. We deliver protection and compliancy capabilities for operators, aggregators, and CPaaS around the world. Today, protecting about 1 in 4 mobile users. So we really do have a good view of what is good and also the bad traffic out there.
Brilliant. And on that note, from the operator side, I will introduce Marcos Rodriguez Gonzalez. Good morning to you from Telefónica.
Good morning, Paul, and thank you to James and the rest of MEF team for inviting me to this session. My name is Marcos Rodriguez. I am currently working as Business Development Manager in Telefónica Global Solution, TGS. TGS is a company of Telefónica Group responsible for the international product and service. We manage all the international networks as well. Our portfolio includes mobile, roaming, voice, and digital service like M2M. During the last year, we are working in how we can evolve our traditional messaging service to the digital era, to the RCS technology.
Fabulous, thanks, Marcos. And you've seen him once before this morning, so we know he's awake. Mr. Zitnik, Steve from Interop, come and join us.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Yeah,
hey,
great.
Steve.
It's great to be here, and good morning to everybody. Another great topic at the Connects forum here. I'm Steve Zitnik. I'm CTO and Executive Vice President of Interop Technologies. Interop is, of course, a solution vendor to the mobile operator space, primarily around messaging. Much like Tom, I've been involved in the RCS ecosystem for longer than I care to admit, and am happy to see it finally coming to fruition and coming off the board, and talking today about security and about enabling trust within the ecosystem. I think it's an excellent topic.
Fabulous, and it's obviously something we've worked closely together on over the last couple of years or so. And next I'll introduce in Francisco Riveros Fiallo from Infobip.
Oh, hello everyone. This is Francisco from Infobip. Well, to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been working in the company already for 7 years, but I've been around telco industry for more than 10. I'm part of the team who delivers our products and services oriented to mobile operators, such as A2P SMS firewalling. And for this panel, I'm also an active member of the RCS Fraud and Security Group. In particular, I'm the editor of the Joint Effort Fraud and Security Assessment document, which we are currently working on.
Fabulous, thanks, Francisco. And last but not least, my former colleague and Chris Drake from iconectiv, who had a few technical difficulties, but should be with us now. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon as well. I just had the world's fastest restart. Thank goodness for a good computer, but security comes first, right? So I was due for that patch update. Terrible timing. Anyway, pleasure to be here. I'm Chris Drake. I'm CTO at iconectiv. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. iconectiv has been involved and investing heavily in establishing or restoring perhaps trust in communications on all channels for the last several years. So this will be a topical discussion and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris, and thanks to all of you for joining. Now we're going to start with Tom this morning, who is going to give us a brief introduction to Verified Sender, given that this was an initiative started by the GSMA. So Tom, we'll start with yourself.
Yep. So Verified Sender, I think we started it when the Universal Profile 2.2, once the initial business messaging specification was done with Universal Profile 2.0. The goal was to provide assurance to the users that they were talking to who they were thinking they would be talking to. So that's the brand name and logo that was shown to the user actually represents the party with which they're communicating, that party is allowed to communicate on behalf of that brand. For that reason, we've involved verification authorities that are checking whether that link between the brand and the logo and such, and the chatbot or the business messaging endpoint, and that then provides that information after verification back to the MAP platforms, who then provide it to the operators. And then that is a signature which is checked by the operator. So to the customer, this is visible as, say, a tick mark or another UI indication that this chatbot has been verified. And that means that the logo and brand that they're seeing is trustworthy, that is the logo and not somebody trying to impersonate that brand. That's, I think, not an easy verification, but I think we will touch on that later in the session.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for that, Tom. So we're going to crack on because we've got a lot to kind of go through over the next 40 minutes. Now, my first question is going to go to Simeon to start the ball rolling, and then we can kind of get everybody's views on this. But how do you see the scope of the problem for security, identity, and verification in business messaging, Simeon, given the behaviors in the market where you find organizations delivering legitimate campaigns on the one hand while delivering illegitimate campaigns on the other? I know this is something that AdaptiveMobile have had quite a bit of experience and insight to.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. I mean, I'm going to start by saying verification is absolutely something that we're a huge supporter of. You know, having some level of identity that can persist from point of origination right the way through to point of termination is absolutely a critical enabler for security. But you know, predominantly verification is about identifying who somebody is at the point of onboarding. It doesn't actually always indicate what they will do. I mean, one thing that's actually probably more common than most people might realize is account credential theft, hijack, takeover. We've seen a surprising range of businesses who continue sending totally legitimate communication, but have had their sending credentials compromised, and therefore are also in amongst that blend of good, clean traffic, having some very aggressive, virulent campaigns being conducted from their identities. So yeah, I think looking at the whole scope, you know, we take the perspective of both the sender, the participants, but also the recipient, you know, ensuring that while someone may be trusted, that they are continually monitored in their reputation, that the whole process, the whole pipe is kept clean, so users are kept safe there. You know, verification, and as we're going to be talking about, reputation of actual behavior.
Absolutely, and this is really, well, you know, why we want to achieve trust, but we have to kind of take a zero trust attitude from the perspective of the importance of verification across every element and every chain associated with communications. Steve, to you on this one, actually, you know, what's your views on this from the, you know, as a CTO of an organization such as Interop?
Yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly that one of the keys to us being successful in RCS and in business messaging in general is that trusted relationship and keeping, you know, as we call it, the channel clean. And I further agree that one of the things that we need to be talking about beyond just verification, which I agree is more of a onboarding understanding what the actual enterprise is and who they are, but more so in an ongoing fashion. And I think that's one of the areas that we need to collectively focus on, is understanding what's actually coming across the wire, right? Reputation is great, but reputation is also kind of a post-incident way of looking at things. You know, someone has to get a bad reputation by doing something bad, right? And the horse has kind of already left the barn at that point. So some of the things that we're looking at as far as Interop technologies goes is, you know, applying kind of some of the AI functionality to understanding what we call bot drift, which is basically when a chatbot is behaving in a manner that is not normal for that chatbot. And there's a number of different technologies that can be leveraged in order to do that. But I think technologies like that, we need to start thinking beyond what we've done in the SMS world, where quite frankly, SMSs are fairly easy and well known to look at the side of the content, you know, use Bayesian filters, use NLP to figure out what's going on in that message. It becomes more complex when we start to add in, you know, video content and pictures and audio content and things along those lines. So the technology needs to continue to evolve in order to keep the channel secure. And if we do that, I think we can actually make the RCS channel more secure than the SMS one is currently. I would hope so anyway.
Well, absolutely, given that the first case of fraud in SMS was one day after its launch. So, so actually, Francisco, you know, from the perspective of the CPaaS, given, you know, the wide variety of enterprises that Infobip represent, clearly this is fundamentally, you know, a strategic part of the business to guarantee to the brand. You know, what are you doing there yourself from the perspective of looking at the security concepts here?
Yes, thank you, Paul. So definitely, certainly this type of business, it is a must to have a controlled environment. So end users do not lose trust, first in their service provider, and second in the business messaging itself. So one of the things we do, and also a lot of MNOs and regulators all over the world, is to try to make sure that the specific, for example, in SMS world, a specific sender ID can be used only by a specific brand or enterprise. And in the RCS world, where this verification authority figure and the guidance of the universal profile and all related GSMA documents, such as this RCS 07, among others, provide an extra layer of security mitigating this illegitimate behavior. I agree with my colleagues here in the panel that it is the need to not only to once a specific, let's say, aggregator or enterprise is verified, just to not go and look more further. So it comes again to the zero trust concept, to don't trust the trusted, right? So, and also, it's also, we need to consider here the possible risk for fraud in this scenario, as it might be not actually the organization who is delivering this illegitimate campaign, but some entity impersonating sorry, the organization to commit the fraud. So definitely the verification of the identity of the source is very relevant in the business messaging world.
No, absolutely. And Chris, obviously, you know, at iconectiv, along with a very small number of others, you know, you're obviously one of the leaders in with the experience of managing registries at scale. You know, talk to us about the work that you're doing, both at an organizational level, but also from an industry perspective, given the work that you're involved with the likes of the GSMA, and also collaboratively with other members of the industry.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so we have a full organization dedicated to trusted communications, and rich business messaging verification is one of the key things to launch this year. In fact, we were keen to launch last year, but as we all know, things kind of didn't really happen as anyone expected. But this year looks like the year of the rich business messaging. We're ready to launch. And along the way, we've been contributing to industry standards. We started with the work that Francisco was editor for in the Fraud and Security Group at GSMA with the RCS Security Risk Assessment. And I think we did some really great work that was published last year, but we're into phase 2 of that now, looking at somewhat more sophisticated vulnerabilities or threats and what to do about those. One of those is the SMS fallback. Do you, because the GSMA specs require, frankly, or suggest strongly that an SMS sent as a fallback when the user's lost their LT connection goes in the same inbox thread in their device as true chatbotting with a data connection and all the security that comes with that, is very, very risky, because we all know you can spoof SMSs. And so some of the recommendations are exploring whether there's a way to secure that sender is in fact as secure as the chatbot traffic he sent before, so that impersonators can't penetrate that system. That's really, really important. And if you can't secure that, then how about you don't support fallback? That would just be a very bad thing to leave a wide open attack vector like that into chatbot threads that people have been using and trusting for quite some time, only to find them someone else behind the curtain, so to speak, down the road. I do want to make a comment on the need to be watching for anomalous traffic from a chatbot, as Steve had said. Critical, because we know the low and slow attack. I want to point out that all kinds of telecom frauds are very common when you look at the core, when you peel it back. They're the same attack on a different vector because there's new technology. For example, you have the do you want me to call you back phenomenon now when you call a contact center and there's a long queue. Well, you don't have to sit there. You can give them a number to call you back. Well, now the fraudsters are giving premium rate numbers, and their call centers are calling back, and they're getting hit with huge bills, millions of dollars. This is the standard Wayne Geary attack, just applied against a new technique of, do you want the call center to call you back? We're going to see the same thing in RCS. We're going to see the low and slow attack, in SMS surface. We're going to see the trial accounts that people offer upstream penetrated with anonymous people that have mischievous goals. We saw that, in fact, a couple of weeks ago in the United States. We saw that 3 months ago in the United States. This problem never stops happening because the supply chain for messaging, and it could be true of chatbots when they launch at scale, seems to trust, every customer trusts their customer and may not be verifying them at all. And then they use a shared pipe, and all kinds of havoc sneaks in there. So I think that we really all have to be vigilant, whether we're in the real-time flow or we're in the verification flow, or we're measuring reputation. We have to be watchful, and I think we have to collaborate and share information, or these attacks will happen, and we'll be trying to analyze them after the fact.
Absolutely, absolutely, and obviously in the preparation for this, in the email string that we were having, clearly, Tom, obviously you even mentioned to myself in the emails about a recent conversation that had taken place at one of the GSMA events about, the behavior, the issue of the behavior and effectively the morphing of the chatbot from being effectively one that's being clean and acting well to one that's not. So Mark, I want to bring Marcos in now because it kind of fits well to the discussion that we'd had in the lead up to this, Marcos, from the perspective of the service provider. Francisco mentioned about sender ID. We're all talking about the verification here. Obviously one of the challenges also is that the purpose of a verified sender, is really to be able to create a situation where you can verify once and then obviously deliver a campaign wherever. However, the reality is today that's not happening. And Marcos, I want to kind of bring you in here because clearly it's something that you're seeing and that you've been talking to your fellow carrier colleagues on. So talk to us about your kind of experience here.
Sure. I fully agree with that. The RCS Verified Sender is critical for RCS. No, we believe that this capability shall be included in from the beginning if we want to promote service to our client. No, Telefónica Global Solution have been working during the last 2 years in different RCS campaigns across different geographics. No, we work with companies from different parts of the industry, and when we explain RCS, when we promote this kind of channel, we talk about user experience. We believe that RCS could increase the user experience because we can include media, we can include, videos, voice, and the rest of these capabilities in order to increase the user experience of in our campaigns. For example, we can send a QR code with a boarding pass or with a shop discount. But and moreover, in the near future, we can include payments in the channel. As we can see, we are talking about critical information, personal information, and payments. And for this reason, we need to protect the channel because in other cases, our companies will not use this technology. But talking now about the reality, about our real experience today, we are launching this kind of campaigns across different MNOs, across different countries, and we are seeing that in each country, for example, in Brazil market or in Spain market, we have different requirements regarding the both brand verification or chatbot verification. In some cases, we need to talk with the RVM provider in order to send all the information from the brand and in order to verify this specific campaign. And in other cases, we need to align or to collect all of this information and send to the MNO. At the end, imagine that we are willing to send, a multinational campaign, from a brand like Coca-Cola. If Coca-Cola is willing to send a campaign in Brazil and Spain, maybe they will receive 3 or 4 emails today collecting information for verifying the chatbot, And we believe that we need to put focus on this. We need to put focus from the beginning how we can involve this critical capability of this channel if we want to grow in business. And it's really difficult because if we try or based on our conversation with our partners and with our internal MNOs and with our clients, if we want to create this open ecosystem in which we can share information along all the chain, we need to study the legal requirements per each country and each region. We need to look for a technical solution. As our colleague Tom explained it at the beginning of this panel, the GSMA has developed an amazing work defining the verification authority and the verification process, but how we can implement this solution is really difficult. The technology is there, but we need to start to work all together in how we can integrate our network, how we can put this neutral entity in the middle in order to reduce the complexity, because today we are handle all of these things manually. So this is more or less
absolutely
our view on RCS verification and security.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to talk on this because we had a question come in from Konstantin Savin. How can global brands ease the process of sender verification in every country, in every MNO? Or will this always be an individual onboarding process? And this is exactly the purpose of this particular topic, Konstantin, because absolutely there needs to be consideration for how you're going to manage small, medium, and large organizations. Because if you've got a globally recognized brand, there needs to be a consideration of how that is going to be managed to be able to engage them, whether it's one of Unilever's companies or Procter & Gamble's companies. To bring in Tom on this, Tom, what is your view on this from the GSMA's perspective, as the organization that defined Verified Sender, to be able to kind of consider that issue of onboarding and verification for globally recognized brands to ease the process?
Yeah, I think it's an issue. It's more on the business side rather than the technical side of the process. That's probably related to the ecosystem still being in development. where each country, each operator chooses their own model for verification, works with some specific verification authorities to do that, and that not being aligned with what other countries and other operators are doing. I think as GSMA, we've been pushing for that alignment to happen within country, but across countries, I think that's still hard. I would expect that as the ecosystem develops, that there will be a number of verification authorities emerging that have global activities and are allowed to verify chatbots in most countries, and that will ease the problem. But it's not a straightforward one. It's also what we touched upon earlier, the zero trust. As an operator or as a subscriber, should you trust that because a brand has been verified in another country by another verification authority, that the brand is verified for your country as well? That's not a straightforward issue, I think, to solve.
No, absolutely, fair enough. And Simeon, I guess to you on this one, from the perspective of verification authorities, from a more kind of independent perspective, given the nature of your work, is it a case that a standard needs to be developed specific for verification authorities, and also that the importance of interconnect? We're talking about interconnect from the Open RCS forum and this morning, but what are your views on that to be able to achieve a globally defined process?
Yeah, so I think there's two aspects to standards. I mean, first off, is there a standard? And then secondly, what are the motivations for all parties to actually comply with that standard? I absolutely understand for multinationals, onboarding, having a single process, a single consistent manner absolutely eases that. However, I would also offer in our experience, in our visibility, what we see is that, multinationals have so many different parts to their businesses that are engaged in customer communication, customer contact. And quite often the motivations for them is actually more about, for example, cost saving. So, I mean, I know that there's been discussions on other MEF connects on grey routes. I mean, that's a great example where sometimes another part of the business may be motivated to do something with a different identity in order to save a fraction of the cost. The challenge is what they're now doing is trying to encourage or train the user to respond to two different identities or multiple different identities. So, there are implications on standardizations. If people want a standard, are they going to then adhere and comply right across the business? What do you do if you find a business that's not compliant to that? So I think in the broader picture, it's starting to shine the light on some important issues. It's not a quick and easy answer.
No, absolutely.
Hey, Paul.
Absolutely.
Could I add something to that?
Of course you can.
We've been looking at interconnection in the GSMA security assessment for RCS for a while now. The GSMA has security built from the design forwards, and it said that you cannot be a chatbot for business messaging if you're not using the SIP address provided by the carrier, and that if you ever came in on the network interconnection interface, you're not going to be treated like a business chatbot. You are a person-to-person messaging. And these are bright lines, as we call them over here, that you cannot cross. And those fundamentals allow you to start securing things and recognizing mischievous behavior. So I just want to say, like, when you talk about interconnect, you first have to understand the different interconnection regime of a chatbot from a business and a person communicating with the same other person on RCS, and then go from.
There's a couple of issues I think that we're talking about here. One of the things that I think is problematic, with a standard for a verification authority is, I think, what Paul or Tom rather was alluding to, is that the various jurisdictions and geographies have different requirements. So we will probably eventually get to a place where there are large global companies that can handle the verification processes unique to each jurisdiction. But we're not quite going to get there. From a technical standpoint, this isn't that hard a problem to solve. Indeed, there are already solutions out there. And one of the things we talked about this morning, I think Paul alluded to in the ORF, which is the Open RCS forum we just launched, is one of the action items and work items that we'll be working on in that group as a vendor community, is the standardization of the certs and standardization of how you push those things and do those things. Those problems we can solve. We've got ourselves at Interop. We have, Mavenir in the group. We have WIT in the group. We have pretty much all of the major RCS vendors who are committed now to doing this kind of work. But the problem for the enterprise is still going to be, we can make it in the short run much better than it is now, where this is done on an MNO by MNO basis, basically. Each platform does its own verification. To something that is more of a federated or more of a maybe even a countrywide or a region-wide. But that's just going to take time, because the issue really isn't technical. The issue is liability and legal. Those are the two issues that need to be solved.
I would like to add also, if may I, is that I completely agree with Stephen, and also to try to address Marco's use case. We also see here that within the RCS world, there are different deployment models here. So there is completely RCS infrastructure, AS, map provider, everything within the MNO. Also, you have these hosted solutions, hub solutions. So each market is addressed differently. Then it's not only about a unified verification authority, but also about who's going to collect that information for that verification authority. So, which is what Marcos, was having issues with, with all the partners that he was talking to. So, I agree also with Stephen that at a certain point there will be those entities who are, let's say, be reached, or they are worldwide, connected, which could help those brands to get to those different markets.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually on that, I know Simeon, Simeon, you wanted to kind of make a comment on this, on the onboarding on the multinationals.
Yeah, I mean, so I think sort of further to the concept of onboarding, I mean, I would probably just sort of say to folks, let's say have a look at what's happened in the URL website domain space. We saw, to start with a land grab, the internal tensions in businesses meant that, new services, new sub-brands were then creating their own domains, and we saw aggregation again of those. At the end of the day, every business now has such a mishmash of various different identities. We would still counsel sort of look at it from the broader perspective of, the full points of a business engagement with the customer. There isn't such thing as a brand. There are so many different business units, so many different communication methods. Chatbots are just one part of that full spectrum. Look at it from the other end, look at it from the end user perspective. They're going to be engaging with brands across so many different services and bearers. What we provide here has to give somewhat of either a uniformity or a consistency, at least in security and in perspective, across all of these different services.
No, absolutely. And on that, we had a question come in from Chris Chen. He says, I think end-to-end encryption is not mandated for both traditional SMS and RCS. Then in the business messaging use cases, what security mechanisms are already in place and what will be implemented in the near future? So I guess I'm going to go to Tom to start that kind of piece off. I know we're kind of all rushing for time today to kind of keep to the clock for the European roundtable. So we'll have to answer these questions that do come in quite quickly. But from the perspective of the work that's going on in the RCS security subgroup at the GSMA, that the likes of Chris and Francisco involved with, Tom, it'd be good to kind of get your view on how you're seeing things evolve.
Yeah, so end-to-end encryption is currently not in scope of RCS for amongst other legal reasons. But the messages are encrypted or sent over encrypted bearers at every hop, say between the aggregator or brand and the map platform. That would be a TLS encryption. Map platform to network would be encrypted, and then the network to the client, that's either encrypted or TLS as well, or encrypted with the radio barrier as well from an cellular connection. So we have encryption at all these levels. It's only in between, say, in a messaging layers that a message could be accessed, but then you're also within the trusted domain of the operator. So in principle, there's not a big end-to-end encryption issue there for business messaging.
Yeah, I think the issue that you have with encryption, end-to-end encryption, particularly in a carrier-based solution, is the regulatory framework around lawful interception, and the requirement in pretty much all jurisdictions that the operator be able to support, the LI interfaces, the X1, X2, X3 interfaces, in order to support that functionality. Where you see, end-to-end encryption being promulgated is primarily in the OTT community, because they simply don't have those regulations right now. I know there's some regulatory issues going on, some people talking about leveling that playing field a little bit, but it's a difficult thing to do. But as Tom pointed out, the actual communication, so the MSRP is over TLS, and so it is encrypted, just not fully end-to-end encrypted.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So jumping forward on this, I just want to touch upon reputation. Steve, you mentioned reputation before, but Chris, from your perspective, how do you see the difference between machine reputation and human reputation? Obviously, there are two fundamental parts here. And how might each deserve consideration and affect how any given communication is processed or managed?
Yeah, Paul, thank you. That's a very complicated question. You really have to unpack it and then deal with the piece parts specifically. First of all, reputation for people versus machines. Rich business messaging is not necessarily going to be recognized by an end user as a machine. They just know they're chatting. Some more sophisticated, techno-sophisticated end users may recognize quickly that they have a chatbot at the other side, but fundamentally all they care about is they're talking to some business, they're talking to a sender. So I don't think that the distinction is really all that important there, but I do want to stress reputation is multifaceted, right? Are we talking about what a carrier observes over time and kind of keeps a record of, perhaps a score of some sort? Are we talking about crowdsourced sentiment from the internet and social media? Or are we talking about something that Simeon, Coney, or Steve are monitoring day to day? So there's no standard for reputation. There's no even standard, say, lexicon or terminology or schema for reputation. So we got a lot of work to do in that respect, and I think we're going to find very bespoke approaches to reputation coming online. People who are used to crowdsourcing that sort of thing for voice calling integrity probably will bring it to chatbots, and so we're going to see quite a mess of diverse approaches and innovations for reputation service, and it'll have to all settle down, I think, to see which ones are effective and what the industry should sort of attach itself to and promote and develop.
No worries. Now I'm appreciative of time, so I just want to kind of ask a couple more questions before we're forced to wrap up. But I'm going to go to Marcos actually on this one. I was going to start with Steve, but I'll go to Marcos to make sure you get a fair bit of airtime as well. So Marcos, one of the things that we were going to touch upon today was about in terms of verification was. Should organizations marketing themselves as a provider for verification be subject to verification themselves, and by whom? Clearly some state inability to deliver verification, yet what is really under the hood? How is their verification being undertaken? What is being verified? And is the level of verification acceptable and aligned so as to protect and secure the enterprises they represent, large, medium or small, which kind of goes to the fundamental issue of whether it's Telefónica, Orange, Voda, whoever in the world is putting the tick mark against the message, that they're doing that with confidence, because quite frankly, having been involved with this for some time, there are some organizations out there that, should not be allowed to deliver verification, in my opinion. What are your views from the MNO?
To be honest, as my colleague said, the verification is critical today, but it's more important in the P2A communication. No, imagine that we are willing to provide directories, and discover capability to our end brands, with small enterprises, but also with the multinational ones. How we can verify that this customer is really talking with this company? Today, we don't have a close answer to your question, Paul. It's really difficult for us. We are working with in different approaches. We are working with our partners. Maybe the MNOs could work together in this part. Imagine that in Spain, for example, if one company is registered and verified by Telefónica de Spain, Vodafone and Orange in Spain could reuse this certifier. So we are open to study collaborative models with other big companies, other big groups, but also with aggregators, because at the end aggregators have a direct contact with the brands, and for sure with the RVM providers as well. But our idea is to try to look for the cheapest solution and the robust one. Why? Because the cost is really important as well. Today we cannot think in a expensive solution, create a central database, hierarchies in which we can consult, and so on. It's really important to be competitive in terms of cost, and we need to look for collaboration and sharing infrastructure along all the chain in order to reduce the cost and be competitive if we want to compete with the OTTs like WhatsApp. Because at the end, RCS is a telco solution, and the telco solutions are more complex because we need to sign agreements, we need to develop solution as an ecosystem, and WhatsApp or the other OTTs can resolve this problem by themselves.
Absolutely. And I know literally we have 1 minute left, unfortunately, because I know the sessions have been running a bit late today. But obviously, there's been a lot of work ongoing around sender authenticity, looking at the types of fraud involving impersonation of the source, and the practical issues that arises. I guess a final question to all of you, very briefly, very, very quick answers on this. Is there an opportunity for industry to collaborate further on a longer term project to fix fundamental issues that have been known for some time across the channels of communication, exploring all fraud scenarios involving sender impersonation, with the objective to create a more secure environment for the future that will benefit, where they can benefit from the likes of zero trust architecture? Steve, last words.
Last words. Yes, of course, Paul. There's always a need for us to continue to collaborate and continue to look at the architectures we're deploying. This is not a static problem, but rather more of an arms race that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there is a constant need and a constant effort that needs to be applied in order to reduce and hopefully someday fully eliminate fraud in the ecosystem.
Well, Francisco, I know you kind of brought this question up into this as from myself to rate it. So hopefully that kind of gives you a kind of a positive view that there is something that we can do there.
Yo, definitely. Just as we are running out of time, quickly, definitely, I agree with Steve. Currently in the job that we're doing in the FAST group, that we are working really arduously to try to get all these, let's say, sender impersonations, type of attacks, threats, etc. That we have here. My pleasure to have our colleagues here working in this document as well in the panel. We have seen already that there is a kind of a collaboration already with other entities about this one. So there are already recommendations that we are doing in our work to try to change it in the RCS specifications. And recently, other GSMA members around the world want us to meet and see our work, to try to work together. So I really believe, to answer your question, I really believe that we could get a lot of people in the industry to work together, in each of them in their area of expertise, to try to gain this security for this. for sure.
Well, listen, we could have all gone on for about 2 or 3 hours this morning. I'm afraid it's been, a very kind of condensed session, but I really truly appreciate the investment of time that you've provided to the Mobile Ecosystem Forum for this event. And thank you again individually and for your organizations to allow us to secure your time. I hope you found it useful. To the audience, to those that we couldn't answer questions to, I do apologize for that, and we can come back to you offline. So I'm now going to step aside and allow the rest of the sessions to take place.
Thank you,
So
Paul.
thank you very much all.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.